Thanks all for coming this morning out to the mill here, Maritime Fiber and Energy. I want to introduce Murray Munn, who's an investor in the mill here. I want to introduce Andrew Clark, who's our candidate for Carleton and the past president of the Federation of Woodlot Owners. John Sabine, who's our candidate in Hampton and the past chairman of the Southern New Brunswick Wood Marketing Co-op. And I want to introduce Terry Wishart, who's our candidate in Harvey. This is an important morning for us because this is such an important issue. Today we're standing in front of a mill that should be running, employing as many as 60 people, and it's not. It's not because in New Brunswick we don't have fair access for our independent mills to Crown resources. And it's a problem around New Brunswick. The same situation exists in the Miramichi, where Miramichi Lumber is often not operating and should be employing 100 people, and often is not, because it doesn't have fair access to the resources. The reason is that the large forestry companies have been given control over our Crown lands, and that means there is not fair access to our resources, to either our independent mills or to our First Nations. The Green Party will change that, because our independent mills, our Crown lands, should be a source of green jobs, and a lot of them, should be a source of new green businesses, should be a source of wealth and prosperity for our rural communities and our First Nations to strengthen their local economies. And the Green Party's strategy for creating a fair share system of forestry based on our Crown land resources would change all of that. We would bring a Forestry Act, Sustainable Forestry Act, before the legislature for debate and a vote to ensure that we have a fair access for all those in the industry to our forest resources, and so that First Nations have fair access as well. This would mean taking the licenses away from the large mills now and taking an entirely different approach, where we would have professional management organizations managing our Crown land areas. They could be business enterprises, social enterprises, they could be cooperatives. There's been a number of proposals in the past like this, made by the people in the Macadam area, made by the people in the Juniper area, made by the people in the Miramichi area, and time again they've been turned down. This would ensure that we get the full value out of our resources, that the resources would be available on a fair basis to existing businesses and new businesses. It would ensure that First Nations have a fair access to Crown land resources, and it would ensure that the resources could be managed on a sustainable basis, which is not the case now. These organizations, these enterprises, would be accountable to the people of their regions and to the people of New Brunswick through arrangements, through contractual arrangements with the Department of Natural Resources or with First Nations or with municipalities, depending on the area of Crown lands we're speaking about. This would also ensure that we would create licenses for community forests adjacent to municipalities and First Nations, where they could directly benefit from the utilization of our Crown resources. So this is a vital priority right now to create green jobs and green businesses. We want to see our rural communities and First Nations prosper, and that will not happen unless there is fair access to our Crown resources, so that we can not only reopen the independent mills so that they get the wood that they need to operate, but also to enable startups to occur, new business enterprises to develop, to create traditional forest products and new forest products like biochemicals that can be synthesized from wood. But we can't develop a biochemical industry, we can't build biorefineries in this province unless there is access to the resource. And it's all tied up now in the hands of a few large companies under contract for the next 25 years. So this will necessarily mean that we would introduce a bill into the legislature to nullify those contracts and turn the resources back to the people of this province. I've got a couple of comments here from Murray Munn and Andrew Clark. So if Murray, you want to say a few words, that would be great.
I'm not a real talker, but yeah, I can say a lot. I've been in this forestry business for myself 65 years. I've seen the private wood destroyed, the marketing board destroyed, the private wood destroyed. When now we got left because of the Crown Land Act, I own private ground, which is worth almost nothing, not even worth hardly paying the taxes on. Nobody even wants to buy it because these big companies have all the Crown land they want off of Crown land. They don't even have to pay very much stumpage. Well, really, if you figure it out, last year they lost $33 million. Our government selling our wood to these companies, they lost $33 million. So you know how much they get out of the wood? Not very much, eh? Nothing? Less than nothing? And that makes private ground worth less than nothing too, because how are you going to sell private ground when they're getting this wood for nothing? They don't even have to pay taxes on my ground that I bought, and we got it under silviculture and thinning and all this. I've got to pay taxes on it. Like I pay $40,000 a year taxes on my ground, which I can't even afford to cut the wood off it because it's not worth anything. It's just absolutely destroyed by the Crown Land Forest Act. Now, under Richard Hatfield back years ago, and I don't know if that was one of the best governments we had or not, I'll question that one. But anyway, he gave us the negotiating power for the market boards to negotiate a price on wood. And at that time, we were getting $36 a cord for pulp in St. John. And it gradually come up to, it was worth 70, and that made it so it was kind of workable for that time. Then it went up to 101, which was pretty good for us guys that worked in the forestry. We worked hard, but we enjoyed it because we seen it going someplace, seen it doing something. And then all of a sudden, the tin pulp companies by Bud Bird was given to all the tin pulp companies. And then McKenna come along and he broke the marketing board, took negotiating power away from him, and he couldn't negotiate anymore. The last year we cut wood, the last year we shouldn't have cut wood, 6 years ago, and we were using our own money. Our company lost $110,000 cutting wood and selling it to these companies. We were selling wood for $76 a cord when, what was it, 30 years, 28 years before that, we were getting 101. Can you imagine a drop like that because there's no negotiating power anymore? We had one company to sell to, and you all know who that company was, and you couldn't negotiate a price, so you took what they give you, which was less than nothing when it come right down to the whole thing. And so we had to quit. And I was old enough to retire, but I didn't want to retire. I still don't want to retire because I enjoyed the woods. I enjoyed forestry. I love working. I love doing things. I love see people working. A bunch of us went together, bought this mill, tried to put it in production. And I think there's, 30 or something woodlot owners and whatnot and other people involved in this mill trying to get it going. But we got all the cards held sort of against us. We can't even get Crown land unless we pay a month or 7 days ahead or a month ahead of time. And we got to bring the wood in and do all the manufacturing and then try to sell our wood. So it makes it almost impossible for us to run the mill and to do that. But we would like to see this run like a co-op. When the people of the province would own this mill, we'd all share in it. We'd share in, hopefully, the profits of it. And I'll be quite happy working in the woods and doing things. I mean, we don't want to be millionaires. We just want to work, make a living, not have to work for nothing, really.
Thanks, Murray. So those are the kind of jobs that we should be creating in New Brunswick, and that's a priority, and the Green Party's plan for rebuilding the forestry sector will do that. One of our priorities in this platform, in this strategy, is to restore the 40,000 woodlots in this province as the primary source of supply for the mills in this province, so that's where the wood comes from first. That will provide a good rate of return for our woodlot owners. Every woodlot owner is basically a business person running a small business, generating revenue, creating jobs in their communities, and they want to create jobs in their communities. I'll just have Andrew Clark give the final word here for you.
Well, the reason I became a candidate for the Green Party was the announcement that was made to guarantee this wood supply to Irving for 25 years. I'm aware, as a long-term involvement in the wood marketing boards, and more aware, I guess, than most people on what Crown land policy means in New Brunswick, because unlike Murray, it has affected me directly, and I know what has been going on. It's not accidental that the access that people have had to Crown land, industrial access, meant that most of the licensees have gone out of business, when just a few of the big licensees have survived. The present way that our Crown lands are administering are costing our economy jobs. They're strangling innovation. They do not allow for new companies to enter the market. We are losing, according to Don Roberts of the CIBC World Markets, we are losing over $100 million a year in revenue to the province from selling our Crown land, like Murray has referenced. We lost money. We should be getting at least $100 million more than we're getting now. So the Crown Lands and Forest Act as it now exists is costing every New Brunswicker money. I've been saying now for quite a while that if you want to have money for your roads, schools, and hospitals, you need to fix this problem, because it is a problem.
So the Green Party is committed to ensuring there's fair access to forest resources off of Crown land, and to ensuring that there's fair access to the market for wood products. And that's what returning private woodlots to the primary source of supply would achieve. So thank you very much, and you can ask any of us questions.
Well, first I would like to get the proper spelling of your name.
Andrew, A-N-D-R-E-W-C-L-A-R-K.
And your title before you were a candidate?
Well, I was the president of the Federation of Woodlot Owners at one point.
You're past president, right?
Yes.
And Murray? Bill? Was it Bill Murray?
No,
What-
Murray Munn.
Murray
Munn.
Munn. M-U-N-N?
M-U-N-N.
And you're a part owner of this mill.
Yes.
How long have you been, when did you first invest, I guess?
It's about over 6 years ago.
6 years ago. And at the time when you first put in your investment, you believed that this mill could create jobs up to 60, I believe that was the figure?
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. If we could get it off its feet and running, we'd have 60 or more. There's all kinds of other things that we could do that connected with the mill, other products we could produce. We could foresee it doing better than that even, but we need first of all a government that would work with us to help us to get it off of the ground. And I don't think after it's off the ground we need any help, because I think it would do itself very well. And yeah, we could put a lot of people to work. We wanted to see it run like a co-op though, where the people that have shares in it, and even the people that's producing the wood would have be buying shares in it and whatnot, and they produce some of it if there's a profit, and we hope there would be, and we're pretty sure there would be if we can get it off its feet and get it going. We're sure there'd be a profit.
So what's the status of it now? It's not working?
Right now it's down. We having trouble getting the supply of wood and the money to buy the amount of wood that we have, because they want paid for the wood a week or two before it's even delivered here. And then we've got to put it through the mill, we got to dry it, and we got to plane it, and it'll have to be sitting here in the yard at least a week after that before we get our money out of it. So it takes a big payroll to produce this. Like, it's going to take about $1 million payroll to get it off its feet, get it running, and then we're sure that it would pay it all back, and it would be very feasible.
The Green Party is the only party that has said they will rip up the contract, the forestry contract that's currently on the table. Is that this the defining issue, I guess, for you in this election?
Yeah, it was heartbreaking when Bud Berg gave all of our Crown land way back
1980.
30 years or better. Yeah, and that was heartbreaking to us. That I was in forestry all my life, and my grandfather was in the forestry, my dad was in forestry, I ended up in the forestry, and I loved it. And I bought ground, I had it thinned, and we managed it, and it was a future for my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren now, I guess, and we could see a future coming there, and it looked like it for a while back, years ago, that was going to be that way, that you could produce that and have it carried on for generations. Feasible and enjoyable, right? Because I loved the woods. I just loved it.
So when you heard that the Irving's contract, I guess this was a blast to the past, right, for you, just to hear about the Irving contract and to hear about where that crownwood is going to go?
I heard that and I was sick to my stomach. I felt like throwing up. It was hurt so bad to hear that totally destroyed the private wood, really. Private wood's really worth nothing. I don't know how you could afford to do it. Well, we can't afford to cut it, I know that. You cut in pulp now for $76 a cord when 30 years ago you were getting 101. Think about it, the price of fuel. Like I was doing a building the other week and we turned up some old slips there where we were buying diesel fuel for 55 cents a gallon. That's when wood was about $100 a cord. How much is diesel fuel now? $1.40, $1.45 a liter, and you're selling wood that much cheaper? That's insane, really insane. They have totally destroyed the private wood, and all the marketing board people and all the private wood's been totally destroyed.
Irving says they're buying private wood. Is it not enough?
Irvin's doing what?
Buying private wood from private woodlawn owners. Is it not enough?
I think you should rephrase that a little bit. Buying $70-some a cord when way back 30 years ago we were getting 101. Is that buying or is that taken? Really? I mean, think about it. I mean, we're all human beings here and we know how a dollar's handled and you know what it costs to do something. I mean, you got to pay more for men today where you should be paying more. You got to pay more for trucking by fire. You got to pay way more for your fuel. And you got to pay way more for taxes on your ground. That's the other thing about the advantage of crown land. They don't have to pay any taxes. Us guys that own private ground, I got to pay taxes to the government to help out these poor people that's getting all the crown land for nothing. Really.
David,
Think about
if Irving didn't have access to the crown land that they have access to now, would the independent mills be able to make up the employment numbers?
It's not a question of access, it's a question of control. So we want to bring fairness to the system so that the large companies like Irving or Fornaboo no longer control the nature of the access to our forest resources on Crown land. That control has to be broken and it has to be put back in the hands of the people essentially so that there's fairness in terms of access to our forest resources and there's fairness in terms of access to the market for selling those forest resources. We shouldn't be pitting Crown wood against private wood, and that's what's been happening now and it's been happening for quite a long time now, and we shouldn't be maintaining a sort of stranglehold on independent mills by the large companies who really in the end control access to the forest resources. There's enough to share around if it's shared on a sustainable basis, and that's not what's happening.
Could I offer a few words on that one? The question was, would we have more jobs? And I say absolutely yes. We have lost more than 500 jobs. Murray's been talking about for people harvesting wood on private woodlots. We've lost a lot more than 500 jobs doing that. So if we can just get primary source back, we can create more than 500 jobs harvesting wood on private woodlots to sell. And I am quite confident that there will be other mills that will employ people. It shouldn't be the choice of the government to decide which mills are going to run and guarantee their wood. Let these people compete for wood like other mills do over in the United States where we sell some wood. They don't have any guarantees of wood at all, and they invest millions of dollars in their plants. And they're buying from us on a steady basis, on a market price. And it's worthwhile doing. That's the difference. Just look across the border and see the difference.
How did you guys feel when you heard that the contract was signed? It kind of in a back room. It wasn't really exposed that it was signed. It actually came out in court, the Irving contract. How did that feel, I guess?
How'd that feel? I felt like we just been betrayed again. They've been, the government made a social contract, I called it, with private woodlot owners back in 1982. These companies got access to Crown land, and we got the ability to negotiate contracts. Frank McKenna took that away, and so that contract was broken. And this just makes it absolutely worse. If you looked at the original agreement, the industry was expected to bargain in good faith for the wood available from private woodlots, and Crown Wood was to be their residual supplier, the one who supplied what they couldn't get from the market. And if you look at what they're doing right now in this Irving deal, is exactly the opposite of that. A complete betrayal of the private woodlot owners, and I think the citizens of Brunswick.
As the Green Party, how do you plan to take over these large corporations and the Liberal or like Conservative government that have been in power for so long?
Well, clearly the first step is to remove the licenses from the large mills. And that means rewriting the Crown Lands and Forests Act, and we're saying we would bring in a Forest Sustainability Act, and that would change everything. It's sort of like this. If the lobster fishery was controlled by a few large companies, coastal communities along this province's shores would die. But that resource is accessible and available to fishermen in those local communities, and they have a tremendous role to play in its management. Or another way to think about it is this. Can you imagine if McDonald's controlled the access to ground beef for Relish restaurants in Fredericton? That's what we've got. If Relish restaurants who make great hamburgers, local businesses in Fredericton, could not get their ground meat because McDonald's controlled the supply, they'd be out of business. And that's exactly what's happening for independent mills in this province. And so we've got to change, structurally change the system that was set up back in 1980. It's out of date. No one else uses this across Canada anymore. We've got to bring fairness to the system, and that's what we want to do. It's a question of fundamental justice for the people of this province to create real green jobs, large numbers of green jobs, and to really provide opportunities for new startups, for new business opportunities, for businesses like this that are trying to get going, and of course for First Nations to have fair access as well.